Hey everybody, what's going on? It's Aseer the Veritas, and once again, going into some of the national geopolitical, divine, all the stuff that's basically has been seen to be intensified after we reached that millennial period of what they call between 2000 and 2012. So being that we're now in the third month of Jason, which for those people that don't know represent July, August, September, October, November. This is a heavy ritualistic season for people who are involved in mass geopolitical genocide and nationality-based racial profiling and religious ethnic cleansing. So being that this is the season for them to do that, it's no wonder that a lot of alliances are also being made that they're not talking to you about, such as the alliance that was just made between Morocco and the African Union, and they're going to rejoin it. Now that's interesting because they refuse to join it because Morocco, a lot of people don't know, is occupying a group of Tuareg, Hausa, nationalistic, tribal Bedouin type of people. I forget the actual name for their confederation, but their confederation has been recognized by a couple of the African nations. So Morocco, before when they were going to join, it was like, nah, we can't join because you recognizing these people and we're not trying to give them people a state within our state. And so that is similar to what's happened in Nigeria, where you had the Biafran movement and now you have the Islamic Boko Haram, which to me, based on the research I've done, is just really another front, or African front for the so-called ISIS, which is the Iraq Syrian Islamic State, aka CIA, SIS, MI5, you know what I mean? They started building this conglomeration that we understand as the Islamic State during the Gulf War conflict. So it's interesting how they had a war in that place, but it was referred to as three different things depending on who invaded it. So when I was growing up, it was called the Middle East. Then by the time they started the war, it was called the Persian Gulf. Then after the Persian Gulf and the Middle East, then it went into the Gulf War, meaning that it engulfed everybody. But the term Gulf also on the spiritual level represents the term Gulf, and that is a house, a well where souls are harvested, for those people that don't know. So this shows you the physical, non-physical connection of all of the stuff they're doing. They're not just killing these people and not doing nothing with that energy. So being that Biafra was one of their own state, they failed with that. Fela Kuti, bless the dead, was one of the people that was instrumental in fighting for independent, sovereign, indigenous rights of the so-called Nigerian people. So they wrapped him up in that. So you had Biafra, you have Nigeria, then you have Boko Haram. Same way that they broke up the North Sudan and the South Sudan. Just like they broke Ethiopia and Eritrea. You know what I mean? You have this constant separation to keep the conglomeration disenfranchised, so that way the people who help make money off the breakup can always get paid. So with Morocco now saying, okay, well, whatever, we're going to join, this is at the time that they've established the African Union passport, which basically is a passport that if you have a real nationality, you're now able to go into any of these borders. So all these borders that was created were created during the post-colonial period, you know what I'm saying? And most of the African so-called leaders post-colonial always married into these colonialist families through the white women that they was married. So it's only the modern generation, let's say from the late 90s now coming into it, where you have so-called African leaders that are now pro, you know, Africa, like what you call it, the moves that Ghana is making, or everybody that's expatriating as African Americans going to Ghana. These type of things are great, but as a Moor born here, an Asiatic born here, you also have an estate here that they also want to marry into, and that when you don't know, they basically can claim, based upon you not knowing about your Vasa state, as a national of America from whatever Moorish or ancient designation you classify yourself as. So based on that, there's an old saying that says, I tell you, I'll be writing stuff down sometimes. There's an old saying that says, a kick dog gonna holler, you know what I mean? And a kettle gonna whistle. So what that means is the more you try to oppress and do something to somebody that's gonna hurt them, they're gonna say something about it. So these mass killings that we see happening with the police, as well as the so-called quote-unquote mass killings going on in Chicago, and as well as the militarization of the water system in Detroit, and these type of things, these are all skirmishes before the actual, civil war situation started. So being that Hillary Clinton is basically on death's door, not to disrespect her or whatever, but for those people that don't know, she's very, very sick. So because she's very sick, there's a chance where this guy could get in. But see, he was brought in as the shield. He was, I think, originally used to make her look better, but because she got so much dirt on her own self, you know what I'm saying? Because she got so much dirt in her own situation, she's created a perpetual quagmire which she's sinking into. So a while ago she fell down and really messed herself up. So who's to say what happens with that? But regardless to what happens, that has nothing to do with you as an American national, i.e. as somebody that is a native-born indigenous person here. And because you also have a prophet, whether you acknowledge him or not, he set certain things in parameter for you to be able to benefit internationally from the ground that was already made by people like him. So what they do, like I said in a couple of DVDs, tapes back, where I was talking about how they're using the new face of the black revolutionary as this lighter skinned, half-white mulatto type of archetype, while the original people that's melanated, obviously, there's no doubt that they are, what they are. They're being killed in the street to be eulogized by this new version of black consciousness, or worse. In the conscious community, you have the situation where there's so much gangbanging in it now, and it's so almost WWF that it's taken away from the initial momentum that the elders left for us to do, because people would rather forsake quantity for quality. However, for those of us that keep our nose and stay on the course, we can do the knowledge that when you see things like the fact that on the first day of retrograde, that's when they raided Chris Brown's house. Chris meaning Christ, Brown meaning melanin, you know what I mean? As which was like maybe 2-3 days after the whole Kaepernick thing. Caper meaning scheme, Nick meaning to cut. And then he's playing for the 49ers. The San Francisco 49ers are named after the miners of 1949 that broke into and killed all of the Caliphans who had the mining rights to the land and all of that, and it set off what they called the gold rush. As well as when they killed in 49, that's also around the time they cut off all the Chinese people's heads that was coming over helping build the railroad that was kicking them down the street. So all of these names is based on racism, but they get hating on him because he don't want to even stand up, because he don't want to stand up for the flag. But there's a part of the national anthem, go read it, where it talks about the fact that America is built on the running and killing of slaves, and that no slave will be safe, and all of this type of stuff. So in the next one we're going to talk about more of that, the white slavery thing, how this is really now the chickens coming home to roost for them. But I wanted to make a note of that. At the same time now, whenever something happens to Rihanna where she does some major performance or whatever, Chris Brown goes down. Just like Charlemagne the God pointed out on some interview he did, that every time Joe Budden drop a mixtape, somebody get popped by the police. Now, this is not blaming Joe Budden or tying him into that, but that's just saying ritualistically, there's an algorithm going on that we as melanated people are always being used as the blood to manifest the oil through the grit. So our blood, if you could imagine that being like, almost like oil in an engine that keeps the whole machine that we understand as so-called United States occupation. That's how it works. So based on that, one of the other notes I made was being that, again, this is also going down like that. When we look at somebody like Rihanna, when she came out like maybe right after Aaliyah, you know what I mean? But then when I was looking at Queen of the Dam one day, I realized that they almost fused that energy of Aliyah and then the Akasha into the Rahana that now acts as this dowager, young dowager is over all of the people in that society, because each segment of United States post-corporation society is a mechanism that is brought into the whole to then keep the whole thing going. So while we're focusing on Rahana, while we're focusing on Chris Brown, while we're focusing on Colin Kaepernick, we're now focusing on the Sixth Fleet moving closer and closer to the demarcation line where if they cross is war in the South Pacific Sea. We're not really doing the knowledge to the South Atlantic anomaly that is now actually spreading. We're not even talking about the continent-wide garbage landmass that is floating throughout the world, that is attracting more and more garbage to the point where people are talking about going and colonizing it. This is how we're moving into a phase where almost when they say anything is possible, anything is doable based upon your level of where you start from. But all stateless people are targeted for genocide. So the only way not to be stateless is to latch on to that which was here for you. But the problem is people have put themselves under inferior designations like Indian. If you are an Indian by blood, but you are not an Indian by statute, because in order for white people to become Indians, they had to denationalize you as a Moor. And once they did that, they turned you into an American Indian. So when they use the term American Indian or red man, they're talking about all of the Moors that were denationalized under the red flag that was taken down at Fort Negro, right? Under Colonel Clinch. Check the U.S. War Department for records on that. Then, after they got that, they then now started calling you Negro or black, right? And in that now you fell under the chattel system that was post-British, due to the fact that white and black designations was brought up in 1666 when they set up the Cestui Trust, and the first time the term white was used to describe white or Caucasian Europeans were the position of them creating a standard by which they could classify who was a melanated European and who was not. So these colorable terms now are used at a specific time to now further confuse black people who believe now still that they were enslaved in mass, instead of understanding that it was a two-way street. The ocean waves go both ways. So there was us being taken over there, people being brought over here, and then us coming back over here having to buy back into our own estates that were now under somebody else's name. So when you know all of that, you understand then that once all of this happened through the Census Bureau, this also happened through the War Department, this also happened to the Bureau of Public Welfare. Once these blacks were denationalized, all of this land now was put in trust for these people who fell under the term Indian. So all of the melanated, real so-called Indians was killed, and then Caucasian people came and said, well, we want to apply for this. They said, well, you can't. They said, well, I'm going to give you $5. Meet me around the back of the fort, and I'll give you $5, and you put me on the roll. And then he told other white people, and then they created what was called the Red Man Society or something like that, where they all could get certificates as Native Americans and then go and claim all that land. So all of these fake people that's talking all of this going down, where they talking about they Native American and I'm a quarter this and I'm a card this and the BIA this, all of that is illegal, because none of y'all is real. The melanated Indian, Choctaw, Shinnecock, the original Choctaws and Muskogees and Panahasaha and Raccoon people, all of them people in the ghettos in the United States, that's their reservations. So what's happening up in Dakota with the so-called people calling themselves Native Americans and fighting for that right, that's great. But once you fight for that right to get them off, the reason why you're in that position was because your ancestors cut your relationship off with us, who was the Big Buffalo people. But all of this was destroyed during the between 1791 and 1865, and then from 1865 under Andrew Jackson, then to let's say 1870, where they set up the Reservation Acts and all of this other stuff. And they violated all the acts because they know that you're not the original people. So again, because we understand ourselves as Moorish American, we know then that we were established as a government here prior to all of this going down. And these so-called tribes, 5 civilized, 6 union to 6 nations, Haudenosaunee Confederacy, Iroquois Confederacy, whatever, all of those was Moors. And by me saying Moorish American or Almoravian Empire, I'm including all of them in my blood, which is why I can have type O. which means that I have the blood of everybody in the world, but I can only receive that from somebody that nobody got my blood. So what does that say about us? But you would know that if you believe that you fall under the Salvage Act and these things that these people have put out there to also increase the fear level for people who may want to act but know not what to do, because they don't believe that there are things that's already in place. If you follow procedurally properly, you'll be able to access, because of the fact, as a people, we have a prophet, and any people with a prophet cannot be wiped from the face of the earth. That's not only a maxim of law, that's an ecclesiastical dictum. How long the Vatican been here? Know what I'm saying? How long they've been rocking? How long the Mormons been here? They've been here, and these fake groups, or whatever you want to call them, religions, or whatever you want to call them, are all man-made, or all corporations, are all based on religious men. And according to the legal doctrine, the religious men are legal fictions, creatures of law. They don't even exist. That's why Creflo Dollar will spit on people that's giving him millions of dollars to buy jets and all of that. And this is why because of that, we're not unified, because we're still under the spell of a religion and a custom that has nothing to do with us. So, to summarize, it's really just about you understanding, again, your position and establishing what state you fall under, and take advantage of the categorical inclination of each level of the so-called life in the United States of America. There's the United States of America, let's say from time immemorial, let's say to be specific, because people like to do it. We can start from when the reunification of the Carthaginian Empire came back through the relationship between Mansa Musa and Abu Bakari, by which establishing then the Malian Mandinka Empire, and reestablished the custom and trade routes, which then led to the establishment then of the what we call the United States of America General Congress Assembly. So let's say from 1321 to 1782, that's the original United States, the preamble, the several states, us, the Articles of Confederation, the Bill of Rights, the Articles of Association, and the Constitution, the preamble to the 7th article. After that, now you got the War Amendment United States, corporate United States, that starts in 1791 to 1933, and then from 1933 we organized formally into a corporation with the annexation of Puerto Rico on the back end through the back door. 1979. That's the statutory federal, all of the stuff people talk about, Abraham Lincoln and all that statutory language stuff, going back and forth, establishing jurisdiction, challenging jurisdiction, back and forth. That has nothing to really do with you as a no. I told you, you were in the preamble to the article, because you were private, you were a private citizen, you were outside of all of this. And according to the law, you were never a citizen of the United States, whether you was a 14th member citizen or not, according to them. Then you got the post-fiction United States, 1930, the second United States is 1791 to 1933, and then from 1933 to 1979. Then from 1979 on, you're in the administrative office of the president, the administrative office of the United States presidency of the president of the United States of America, of the United States. So I don't know, well, I know what that is, but it doesn't matter what that is, because that's the country that they got everybody in now, but that's not a country. That's a battleground, according to the documentation that was put in under Senate under the Clinton era. So if you don't want to be in a battleground, if you don't want to be an enemy combatant, if you want to understand how it is to be in amity and do your thing, so that way you have international rights that protect you on a spiritual, physical, and material level, you can email me at houseofl@hotmail.com. I can put you on to certain people I know within that, because this is how it got to be. We can't be posting stuff on the internet all that's dead. That's for fictitious people. Right now, you have people that's working on the internet, where they're trying to establish a chip where you now can upload yourself into the actual web. And it starts with a pill, like a depository. Look it up. Also, look into this thing called rain bombs. Look into this. You understand? This is how some of the major floods have been happening. Rain is not coming down in little specks anymore. It's coming down in huge buckets. So look out for that. And also, again, man, if you out here talking about Moorish science, and you out here, promoting Moorish garb and all of that, I've noticed that since me personally started a lot of different ways of expression in when it comes to expressing yourself articulately as a Moor, whatever. I get a lot of comments, a lot of people ask me and stuff like that. It's great. I have no problem sharing all that. But if you're going to support people who are promoting Moorish identity and Moorish garb and stuff, make sure that they really Moors, man. Because a lot of people be fronting, a lot of people be taking this stuff and be talking this Moorish stuff and showing the turbans and the jewels and the this and the that, and then in reality, their paperwork and none of that is correct, man. So it's not just about looking the part, man. It's about being what we supposed to be. Not just physically, not just in appearance, but actually if you get stopped, you know how to help somebody. Because again, believe it or not, the United States got a trademark act from 1885 that says they have the right to seize anybody that's acting like a Moor, and seize them and punish them severely on behalf of the Moorish Empire and the Moorish government. But you got to be in the empire to receive the benefit even from that. So all of this paperwork people were sending in and stuff, they confiscated that. For the time that we get to a certain position where we now can put it in as a central government, and they say, okay, well, these are all of the people that was traitors in your thing while we was running y'all. Like, the time is coming for all of that, but you got to be in the right position for that. It ain't going to be just you have the temple card and then you pulling out a piece of state ID. You're going to jail. Or worse. So again, man, if you want to be real or whatever, support real Moorish businesses, you know what I mean, and declare them as Moorish American businesses. Stop calling them black businesses and African businesses. Be specific, because having a specific identity is what allows us to move forward as a people. And as a people, you are a nation. As a nation, you're a kingdom. As a kingdom, you're an empire. So let's be what we know we are, man. And I think that's it. Peace.